Thank you all for coming tonight. This is day 10 of Cleanse ATX, and I have a very special guest with us tonight, the star of the film, Joe Cross. And so, thank you, Joe.
Hear me okay? No. Everyone got me? Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me here tonight. I just flew in from Los Angeles. I came in from Sydney on Monday, and just want to say Aramis and his beautiful wife to putting on this great week and having me here tonight. Thank you so much for that. Thank you to you guys for giving up your time, because I know your time is valuable, and to come and spend the evening here watching my film. It's a great honour for me for you to take that time, so I appreciate that. What I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about the journey that I've been on, and also try and do a bit of a Q&A if anyone's got any questions or would like to ask anything about the movie, about Reboot, or about juicing, or anything. So it's been an incredible journey for me, because the movie was shot in 2007, believe it or not. I walked into Dr. Furman's rooms in Flemington, New Jersey in 2007, October 2007. And my 60 days ended just before Christmas in 07. I went back to Australia. I did 3 months of just eating fruits, vegetables, nuts, beans and seeds after the 60 days of juicing. So that was 5 months total before I was off my medication entirely. And so that took me through to close to March of 08. And the good news is I haven't taken a pill since. I haven't had any issue with my chronic urticaria. It's been great. And what was amazing was, to me, was that then my whole taste buds changed, and what I actually wanted to eat, and I'm no saint, believe me. But in terms of now, when I do sometimes fall off the wagon, I can't stay off the wagon for too long. And there's probably not a day that's gone by that I haven't juiced since that first day of juicing in October of 07. In fact, I don't think there isn't a day that I haven't had a juice of some description. And then, of course, I got back to Australia to do what I had to do. We didn't know how long it was going to take for me to get off medication. I mean, I could have, and was thinking maybe I've got to do a whole more year of eating plant food before I'm off the pills. Because on day 60, you didn't see it in the movie, but I went and did a test. I played some golf and did a whole lot of heavy lifting of weights on day 60, and my hands swelled up and the whole condition was there. So I wasn't completely healed. So I kind of went, wow, 60 days of juicing and I've still got this condition. But what was great was my medication had gone down from 15, 20 milligrams down to 2.5. And it took another 3 months to get completely off the 2.5. So we then started to edit the film. Now you've got to remember now that Phil hasn't rung me yet. Okay? So my first movie, which I made, which you'll never see, actually had 6 average Americans that I'd put an ad out on Craigslist. And in 1 hour, I got 300 people who put their hand up to be in a documentary. Because I put an ad, anyone wants to juice for 10 days and be in a documentary? And like in 1 hour, we got 300 people, because everyone wants to be famous in America, right? It was like bang. So we shut it down in 1 hour. And we chose 6 people out of those 300. And that's where Seong, who's in the movie, that's how she ended up connecting with us. And it was just a coincidence that she was from Iowa. What we tried to do was to choose 3 women, 3 men, all different ethnicities, rich and poor, all over the country. And I actually filmed all of those people during the time that I was doing my 60 days. And they sort of tag team 10 days of my 60. So that was the original conceit idea that I had when I started to make the movie. And then in May, it was Mother's Day of 2008, and my mum said, Joe, show some of those fat photos to one of your aunties or something like this. So I had to pull out my iPhone. Now, iPhone hadn't released in Australia at this stage. It's version 1 iPhone we're talking about. So that was my US phone, and because I'm in Australia, I don't have the phone on. So I went to my desk, pulled out my American phone, turned it on to get the photos where they were living, and this voicemail popped up. I thought, that's a bit strange, like, I haven't been in America for like 2 or 3 months, but someone's rung me on that number. And because it was Mother's Day and we were at lunch, I didn't do anything about that. I just showed the fat photos, like I did. My mum wanted me to do it, so I did it. And then after they left for lunch, I went to turn the phone off and I realised there was this voice message, and that was the message from Phil, and he'd left it 3 days earlier in terms of the time frame. So it was just as well, because if Mum hadn't have said I could have been another month before I turned that phone on. So it was quite incredible that that was the case. So I immediately grabbed my camera, went out on the balcony of my apartment, and you saw that reaction. That was instantaneous as soon as I heard the voicemail. Then I had this panic attack. How am I going to get the voicemail onto the movie? Like, it's in a phone. So I did like 12 recordings, and because if you lose that. And so that moment I knew that the whole movie was taking a big change. And I rang up the producer in New York and I said, we've got to get the camera crew out again. Now, anyone in the movie business would understand, I was on time, on budget, everything was done. We were in the final edit of a movie. We are like ready to just close it out. I'm going back to my normal life. We're going to have a movie about juicing that might be sold in a few yogi shops. Some health food shops might, have it on the bench. It really, for me, it was about me getting well. It wasn't about making this movie that would, it was like, the camera was my way of making me do it, if that makes sense. Like, I decided to do this so that I would follow through, because all the times before, everything else I tried, I'd always given up. So when I got this message from Phil, and having driven across your great country and spoken to over 350 Americans and said to them, if you give me a call, I'll give you a hand, he's the only guy who called. Now, I gave my number, I gave my email, I gave Joel Furman's book that I had, that I bought when I went and saw him in his rooms. I had about 100 of those. I cleaned him out of those. So I gave those out to everybody that I could see that wanted help. And he rang. So I couldn't turn that down. I had to do it. And I thought maybe in the credits we can have, that truck driver, and he's doing his 10 days. And to be honest, when I got to Iowa, I really didn't think Phil was going to be allowed to do the 10 days, which is why when you see us go to the supermarket, we buy a lot of stuff that's actually not to juice. We bought a lot of stuff to eat, a lot of nuts and beans. We bought a lot of plant-based food for him to eat. We didn't think he'd be allowed. But Amy Badberg, she gave the green light. And of course, I'm thinking 10 days, we can edit that into the credits. Well, of course, day 10 comes. I've got 2 cameramen, a sound guy, a producer, Phil, all living by the lake, right, in the sunshine, 5 bedrooms, 2 hire cars, per diems, you've got to pay these people. And of course, my accountant's wringing my neck telling me I'm going crazy, and I think it's only 10 days, don't worry, it's only 10 days. So of course, day 10 comes along and Phil goes, Joe, I'm thinking about going longer. And I'm like, really, Phil? Really? Put Robert on, who's the producer. I said, have you blokes put him up to this? Have you made him, because you're on my dime there? And he said, no, Joe, this is because I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to do the Biggest Loser. I didn't want to be the trainer. I wanted him to do it on his own. And the guys who I had working for me were all Michael Moore's team from his movies. So they are strict documentary guys who don't cross the line at anything. There's no second takes in our movie, for example. Like when I go to see Phil on the porch, when I walk up with a t-shirt, that scene, when I first come to see him in Iowa, there's a bloke next door mowing the lawn. We had to wait an hour and a half until he stopped mowing before I could drive around the corner. Because with this background sound of a mower, you can't edit and cut. And there's no oh, Phil, that didn't work, let's do that again, go behind the door. You can't do it because you can tell we're not actors. It has to be real, otherwise you, the audience, can pick it up. So they didn't cross the line. They said, no, Phil wants to keep going. And I said, all right, well, you blokes all pack up and go back to New York, leave one person there with Phil, because you're killing me, and we'll see how we go. But I've got to be honest, on day 60, Phil wanted to go 100 days. And I had to sort of say, mate, I've pushed the production back, we've got to wrap it up. And then he comes back and starts the plant-based diet and starts the exercise, and I couldn't stop the film until he got into the T-shirt. So it was another 2 years. Another 2 years, right? So this was an extraordinary journey for me, of which now has taken me into this blessed position where I'm now able to come and be in a position to talk to you, to share this movie. We've had about 2 million people now watch the movie. There's thousands of people. If I can just, maybe if anybody we'll just do a little thing we like to do. And if you're already standing up, put your hand up. But if you're not, stand up if you've done a reboot. Just stand up if you've done a reboot. Okay, now sit down if you just did 10 days. If you've done longer than 10 days, stay standing. And keep your hand up if you've done longer than 10 days. If you've done 20 days, keep standing. So we got a few people. Any hands up over there? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Can't see behind there, but 7, 8, and then 9. And then longer than 40 days? Fantastic. And then these guys are anyone longer than 60, or you guys are all at the 60? Longer than 60? Fantastic. So that's like a dozen people. And you're going to Cam. This is Cam from Australia. He's going to do 90 days. Is that right, or 100?
Probably
90. Fantastic, Cam. So, and this is an incredible thing that what happens now is that everyone you saw standing up, everyone, whether you did 5 days, 10, 20, 30, they are all leaders and they are all sharing this on because people around them see them and they see the changes and they go, wow, what are you doing? And this is not a diet. Like, I don't call this a diet. We don't call it the reboot diet. It's a reboot. It's a time to take a chance to have a break, your body to give it a rest. It's a time that I believe that we are built not to eat for periods of time. There are 3 things you've got to put in your human body to stay alive. And by the way, everybody here tonight's doing a fantastic job of what their body is designed to do, which is to stay alive. Because at the end of the day, that's all it's doing. Everything about your body is trying to keep you alive. And the 3 things you've got to put in it to stay alive is air, water, and food. Now, we all know you take away air from us for 5, 10 minutes, it's game over. Just think about that. 5, 10 minutes without air and you die. Water, depending on the conditions, 5 to 10 days, you die. Food, very different story. You can go, depending on your condition, depending on how much energy you're carrying on you, you can go well over 30, 40, 50, 60, 90, even beyond 120 days, depending on what you're carrying just on water alone. So let's think about that. We have been evolving on this earth for 4 million years. And during that time, we've evolved not to store up oxygen for more than 10 minutes because air is abundant, but we've evolved to store up energy in our fat and in our muscle. And all I did was take the logic of saying, why am I carrying all this around? Like, I've got all this energy, and you saw it in the movie. Those, hamburgers or pizzas that I'd had like a year or 2 years ago were still on me, that energy that I'd stored up. So to me now, in the last 4 years since I've been doing this, I don't see any fat people anymore. I don't see fat people. I haven't seen a fat person in 4.5 years. What I see is a lot of people carrying a lot of energy around, and my question is, when are you going to use it up? When are you going to take that energy and actually use it? Just think about those little energy cells. Like, they're sitting there waiting to be used, and all of a sudden a cheeseburger comes and they go, what about us? Why can't we be used? So I like to really think about it, and then when you're juicing, we're obviously powering up the nutrition because we're taking all that captured sunlight, that harnessed energy from the sun. We're freebasing Mother Nature, and we're just taking it straight into our system. And as anyone knows who runs, can anyone here run and eat a bagel and cream cheese when you run? No. But you can juice or drink water when you run. So why can't you eat a bagel and cream cheese when you're running? Because the blood that usually is used for digestion has been put down to the legs, muscles. It's using that to convert that into energy so you can run. But if you think about taking juice down when you run, you can do it. Therefore, the digestive process for juice versus food is very different. Rapid absorption, not a lot of work. So there's not a lot of effort. So for someone like Cam, who's on day 60 today, his body's having a huge break. His body's saying, Cam, thanks very much. How many pounds have you lost, Cam? 71 pounds in 60 days. So what Cam's doing is using up all that energy, and his body has never ever had this concentration of energy, of nutrition in his life, ever before. Unless you've done this before, Cam, and I don't think you would have, no. So there you go. So let's crack into some questions. We'll ask 3 or 4, and then we'll bring the panel out. Does that sound good? Okay, so any questions? Yes, mate. That's a very good question. In fact, I've got plans to make another movie, and we're going to probably do it this year. But it won't be about me. That was the caveat up there, is it won't be about me. But it's a very good question, and what I plan on doing, believe it or not, is to go out to our 300,000 community members and actually get their ideas of what they want to see. I want to see what they're interested in, because what I'm interested in is doing a really deep dive of what goes on in the body when you do this, because I'm fascinated by how and what we're getting so many incredible results with people who are getting off medication, people who are reversing heart disease, that are getting off so many pills to do with hypertension or with arthritis. So I'm really interested in drilling down as to what's going on there on that. And that, I think, that's interesting. But it's a very tough thing to try and, and I've always said I'm not going to make a movie unless, it's going to be up to par of what we've got to do at Reboot Media. So I'm going to try and we're going to get all the ideas and see. Yes. How did I clean the juicer on the road? It's a very good question. So I had an RV following us. But the problem with the RV is it was only a small RV, and the sink was too small. So we couldn't get the items under to clean them. So we actually had to attach the hose to the RV, the hose at the back, the tap, and we did that. And then we did a lot in gas stations. So a lot of the scenes you might see, if you could turn the camera around, there was a gas station there, even though it looked picturesque. We were at the back of a gas station plugging in through a power cord and using their restroom as a wash. Yes. What about protein? So the question is, what about protein? So I get asked this a lot about protein, and I guess the way that I look at it is that first of all, there is protein in the juice. Okay, so depending on what you are juicing and what plants you're putting in, there is protein in there, but there's certainly not enough protein to sustain the rest of your life. So that's why it's not a diet. So just juicing only is not a diet. Like, if anyone said to me, I'm just going to juice only the rest of my life, that's unhealthy. That's not good, right? So the question becomes is that someone like Cam, for example, who's on day 60, he's lost 71 pounds. Now, if I took 71 pounds off you, there'd be nothing left of you, right? So this is a very personal thing, which is why I believe that you are the best judge of your own health. And so some people do 5 days, feel amazing, some do 10, 15, 20, or go right up to 60 and beyond. So it's a personal thing. Now, what I look at is that we're not out lifting weights, we're not out trying to build muscle, because during my reboot, when I lost 100 pounds in the total of the 5 months, 30% of what I lost was muscle, 70% was fat. So this is not just losing fat only, which is why we don't like to concentrate on the weight loss as much. We like to concentrate on the healing and getting off medication and getting well and having that clear outlook. So when you went to sleep last night, you didn't have protein tablets or pills or a protein straw while you were asleep, did you? Like for those 8 hours? So I look at it that there is a period where it's okay, and then there's a period where it becomes detrimental. So what we've got to do is each of us is find that period where we're in the safe zone before we go over into a danger zone. Does that make sense? Okay, we'll take one more question and then we'll bring the panel out.
What do you consider to be good protein sources?
Good protein sources? Oh, well, it's a good question. So I have this theory about looking at food, and I don't like to look at food as good or bad. I think that we tend to put things in this category: is this good for me or bad for me? And I'm certainly was really, I was like that. I was guilty of that. So if you say to me, what's good for you in a period of time, like it is a consistent basis, then obviously nuts, beans, seeds, these sorts of proteins are fabulous for us, because for most of our existence, we've lived on plant food. Then we started eating a bit of animal food, then we started eating a bit of whole grain where we could farm, and then only in the last 50 years, 60 years, have we actually eaten this thing called processed food, which is what we eat the most of now in terms of caloric energy. So what I say is that if you've been like basically all week going to the gym, you've been eating lots of plant food, you've been having very lean meat, if you like meat, or lean chicken, whatever, maybe 3 or 4 times during the whole week. And it's Saturday and you go to a baseball game and you want to have a hot dog and a beer with your mates. I say knock yourself out and enjoy it. And I don't say that's bad for you. I say you've deserved over this period of time to have something that you enjoy. And so I don't like to think, oh, this is bad for me, because we have this guilt. You know, most of America woke up this morning, got out of the shower, looked in the mirror when they're in their birthday suit and said, oh my, what happened? And they look at themselves and they are depressed and they beat themselves up. They say, you're a loser, you're a no-hoper. They do the side, they go, what's happening here, you know? This is not good. The hold in, like you saw, if anyone who's seen my other, the animation I've got on the web, you see me doing that in animated form. And so what I want people to do, or let me backtrack a second. If that was your husband or wife or your partner coming in and berating you every morning like that, they wouldn't last 5 minutes. But we do it to ourselves every day. Every time there's a mirror, we say, how bad are you? And what I find people on the reboot when they're consuming this plant food, they just feel good about themselves. They have positive affirmation. They look in the mirror and go, wow, you're a winner. And that propagates a great day. And so for me, I'm like very much about, you know, let's look at this thing in a big picture point. Let's not look at it. If you have a bad day or you feel like it's a bad day and you're falling off, don't beat yourself up. There's always tomorrow to get a green juice or to get lots of nuts, beans. I mean, you guys are lucky. You have Whole Foods in your country. We don't have Whole Foods in Australia. I mean, if I lived in America, I would be eating downstairs at that bar. I'd be like a cow at the trough the whole time. That's where I'd be. I don't need to go anywhere else. So that's how I sort of tend to look at it. Oh, so you want to kick off the all right, cool. So we're going to do a panel now, I think. While we're doing that, there was one last question that someone had down here. Yes, Rebecca.
Yes. For the April 1st is the 1 year anniversary.
April 1st, yeah, 1 year anniversary. That's right, 1 year. It's incredible.
To celebrate, I am doing an online group juice fast, and I wanted to know, what are you going to do to celebrate?
All right, so Rebecca's doing an online celebration for our anniversary, which we launched the movie in New York City on April 1. So we're going to put out well, what I'm going to be doing, I don't know where I'm going to be on April 1. What is it, Sunday, isn't it? Yeah, I'll be in New York. But we're launching a video which is going to celebrate the last 1 year of our journey as we've gone all around America and Australia. So it's very exciting. 1 year. It's incredible how quick it's gone.
So, check. I'm here to welcome Brendan Brazier from Vega. And also Dan Merrick from our Health Starts Here program here at Whole Foods. And Dan is the healthy eating specialist here at Whole Foods. And we're bringing all of us together to continue to inspire and educate you and answer questions. And, you know, we're combining all of our knowledge, wisdom, and experience here to share more with you. So, any other questions tonight?
Here we go, over there.
So the question was, when people that really desire this juicing program, that need this juicing program, that don't desire it but really need this program, how do you go about helping them?
I get asked that question a lot, and I've given this a lot of thought. And you know that saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? So what I have found is, you know, leading by example is a great way to inspire others around you, people you love or people that love you. Because generally what we're talking about here is we have loved ones that we want to get back on a path where they're heading towards health. And so actually telling people what to do doesn't work. You know, I have never ever found a person who's carrying a lot of energy on them that they needed me to come up and tell them that they were carrying a lot of energy. They know it. You know, telling someone to lose weight doesn't work. If it did, we wouldn't have the epidemic of disease that we have in America today. So I do genuinely believe, and this is what I've done. I've had mothers who ring me about their sons. I've had, you know, wives ring about their husbands, and they say, well, I'm at wit's end, what can I do? And my advice is, well, first of all, don't tell them about the movie. Don't tell them about me. Just ambush them and say, hey, I heard there's great movies on, and just let them sit down and watch it without them thinking they have to watch it. Okay? Find it as though they found it themselves. That's point one. Point two is then say, you know what, I'm going to give that a go. Don't even ask them to do it. Don't say, hey, do you want to do it with me? No. Say, I'm going to give that a go, and just start doing it. And if they're in the house and you're the person cooking dinner, well, they're going to be in strife for 10 days, aren't they? So they've got a choice to make. And so then so that's how I think you've really got to just do it yourself and lead by example. And when they ask the question, ask how you're feeling, whatever. Be honest. Oh, it's not good. I'm feeling great. But day 4, day 5, I feel great. And then say, look, if you want to do with me, you're welcome. I'll help you. But I think pushing people and telling them doesn't work.
Yeah, I have a great story to add with that. When I launched Cleanse ATX, I invited my brother, Stephen Burris, to come to Austin and support me with the marketing efforts. And he's very standard American diet, booze, alcohol, meat, potatoes. And he decided to do the cleanse with me. Not for me saying anything, just me leading by example. Me, living mostly raw, plant strong for 6 years. Came to Austin, did the cleanse, and I didn't know this, but he was addicted to a pharmaceutical medication for 4 years. He came, did the cleanse, and in 3 days he was off his medication. Yeah, in 3 days. And one of the things I share with my community is that all healing is done by request, and that we can't force anything on someone. We lead by example, we shine our light, we drink juice, we have fun, we just love our lifestyle, and then eventually what will happen is someone will come up to us and they'll ask us, what are you doing differently? What's going on in your life? And they'll start to request. They'll start to ask new questions. That is the cue for you as the lighthouse to shine and to share. And then sometimes you just remain peacefully silent and put the film on and say, here, come watch this. So it was really, really beautiful to see my brother heal while he was here. Any other questions tonight?
Children on the reboot. Habits start young. I'm just repeating so everyone can hear you. Habits start young, yes. What am I doing for kids? Okay, so I've got another couple of theories. As you can hear, I've got a lot of theories because I've given this a lot of thought. I think that, once again, it's leadership in the home and in the school. Now, I think it's easier to start changing things in your own home than it is to change things in schools, because you got a whole lot of factors going on at schools with big issues, big business involved there. But in the home, you don't, and you can't have a pizza and tell the kids to have broccoli and carrots. That ain't going to work. And likewise, you shouldn't eat broccoli and carrots and let them eat pizza. Now, I get some mothers say, "Oh, my kids are fussy eaters," and that, and I say, well, okay. So what do you reckon happened 10,000 years ago when there wasn't any food around? What do you reckon those 7 and 8-year-olds did? They didn't eat. But we're still the most successful species on the planet. So my view is, you know what? Put the food on the table. If they don't eat, they go to bed hungry. I tell you what, after 3 days, they'll start eating it. It does happen, right? They start eating it. Now, once again, I'm not saying that they can't go to their mates or friend's house and have their bread or sodas and those sorts of things, but pretty much, and it's interesting, and if you look at parents that do the parenting like that, when their kids are eating well, when they go to homes where there's high sugar, high fat, high salt, they don't eat as much. They don't feel as good because they eat it. They don't like it. So it does work. It's not something that, I don't think it's cruel, to be honest. I think it's actually cruel to feed them the garbage, to be perfectly frank.
Over here.
You want to take that one? Why you can't have tea? What's the issue with tea? What's the issue with tea?
Well, basically, we're talking about a caffeine, and we try to, especially when you're doing a cleanse, you want to try to get as clear as possible. So typically on a tea, we're going to avoid the caffeine, especially if you're starting to really get a lot of those toxins out of your body. And specifically caffeine, you can actually be able to detox in that same way to be able to get it out of your system.
If you are having non-caffeinated teas, some herbal teas are absolutely fine to have if you're juicing only. But you know Howard Schultz, who owns and started Starbucks, right? The founder of Starbucks, Howard Schultz. So he saw the movie, and loved the movie, called me up, said, Joe, can you meet me? And I said, mate, Howard Schultz, of course, I'll come and see you straight away. I dropped everything and went from Soho up to the Four Seasons in Midtown Manhattan and met Howard. He said, mate, I was at lunch yesterday. There was a bloke drinking a green juice who's never drunk green juice in his life. And I said, what's going on? He said, I saw this movie and now I'm drinking it. So Howard wanted to meet me and know what, this is before the movie was released. This is when I was doing private screenings in New York. And Howard said, I couldn't do it without drinking my coffee. I mean, I couldn't. I said, you know what, Howard, if that's what it's going to take you to do 10 days of just juicing, but you've got to have your coffee, go for it. Like, you do it. I mean, just because I did it this way doesn't mean that that's the way to do it. You know, I'm a big believer in that if I went to the top 10 experts in America and said, what should I eat? I'm going to get 10 different answers. I'm going to get 10 different answers. The one thing I know I'm going to get the agreement on is that you've got to eat a lot of plants. Yeah. There's no one who's going to tell you not to do that. But all the other nuances, all the other little things, like you decide that for yourself. So I'm big on that, and I've met so many people, and I'm sure there are people who've done a modified reboot that works for them, and that's something people have brought their juices out. People have never done a reboot. The Kurt Engfer, who helped me on the movie, he was great. He was my co-director. He never did just juicing only, but you know what he did? He stopped eating breakfast, and he had 2 juices for breakfast. After 12 months, Kurt lost 40 pounds.
Wow.
He couldn't believe it. Now, why did he lose 40 pounds? And we were trying to work this out. Because his taste buds changed where his nutrition. Because at the end of the day, when you eat, you're eating for your cells. It's the cells that want the food, not your stomach, not your brain. It's the cells that want it. The 2 trillion cells that make you up. If you feed them what they want, they're not hungry anymore. But if you give them high processed food, high animal product food, there's not enough energy in that food to feed the cells, so they get hungry again. So what actually happened to Kurt is he started making better choices during the day. He didn't eat as much during the day, which is why he lost the 40 pounds. So, quite incredible, just by changing one thing.
Question over here.
How do you know how much and what you eat when you start out?
How do you know how long to juice for and what to eat when you start back to eating?
No, when you start your program,
Yeah.
how do you know what to fix and how much of it to eat?
Right, so I'm very big on understanding this, that when you juice, you're not putting what we call insoluble fiber into your body. In other words, you know the pulp that's coming out? That's fiber that's not going in. That's really good stuff. So if you've gone from the normal American diet straight into juicing, and we were talking about this earlier, you are in big trouble, like I was. I mean, I couldn't get out of bed for 4 or 5 days. Because what's going to help evacuate the bowels? I'm not putting any fibre in to get rid of the pizzas and the burgers and the milkshake and the chocolate sundae I had at 5 to 12 the night before I went and saw Joel Furman. Because that was my last day. I thought I better load up, right? So here am I the next day going, oh, this is murder, right? So what I want to see people do if they're going to do a juice only is to have 5 days of eating lots of high fibre plant food to get the bowels working, get off their addictive substances of caffeine, of nicotine, of high fat, high sugar. Do the pain while you're eating, not while you're juicing. So then the real question comes down to, I think it's a very individual thing. For someone who's carrying a lot of energy, they can do more than 5 days. But if you're not carrying a lot of energy, I think 5 is about the minimum I have experienced with my community that they really start to see results. Usually 1, 2, and 3 is pain. So you're sort of on your way to the top of the mountain. When you get to 5 or 10, depending on how poor your diet was, you start to see the view and it's amazing and you just want to stay there. So I'm sure those who are experiencing that high now realise that it's like being in the valley with all that garbage is not as much fun as being on the top of the mountain having the view. So then the real question is, I say to people that they know how long they inherently know how long they should impose what we're really doing, a nutritional famine. We're really putting a famine in place. Because we're supposed to go through famines, but, you know, we're too efficient now. There's a feast on every corner. So if we're just going to live a world where we only eat all the time, I mean, I was 40 years of age. That's 40,000 meals without a break before I did this. And look what it was doing to my system, and particularly with the sort of, inverted commas, food I was putting in. Does that answer your question? Oh, how much juice a day? I'm sorry. So I was drinking between 6 and 8 20-ounce litres a day on average, 6 and 8. But some days I'd only have 4. See, I look at it as fuel. I look at it as though that's real. Like I said it before, I'm freebasing Mother Nature. I mean, it's liquid sunshine. I'm putting the complete fuel into my system to keep me going. So that if I'm tired or low on energy or whatever, or hungry, I drink. And some days I needed to have like 20 ounces, and some days 4. So it's a very, once again, but what I want people to do is to think about the 5 colours of the fruit and vegetable rainbow: purple, orange, yellow, green, and red, and make sure that they're getting those colours into their juicing every day. Because we want to try and get as many different phytonutrients and those colours that all hold this energy from the sun, that have different compounds and different properties that help us in our body.
And what I hear Joe saying is listening to your body when you start a reboot, when you start a juicing program, tune in and see what your body's signals are telling you. And some days you did 6, some days you did 4.
Yeah.
And that was just developing an attunement to your body and listening to it every day and then following through with those signals.
Absolutely.
We have a question over here.
Oscar, this is for Brendan.
Okay.
Brendan, I don't know that everyone here knows who you are. And being like a predominantly raw vegan myself, the greatest thing that the majority of us get is, yeah, but how can you be an athlete? So could you give just like a 20-second intro of who you are to everyone here and what you do, like what your regime is? It's nice to see you.
Sure. Thanks. So the question was, well, it was a request to introduce myself. So, yeah, I'm an athlete. I used to race professionally. I used to do Ironman triathlon. I did that for 7 years as a career. I've been vegan since I was 15, 22 years now. And it was a transition period, for sure. I didn't start into it and do great right away. So kind of, as you're seeing in this film as well, it's, things aren't going to magically flip overnight. It's a process, and it's a process worth investing time and effort into. Because also, I completely agree, and I found the same thing. My palate changed. My desire to eat good food was so strong, and the desire for the stuff that wasn't so good went away. And that's a great place to be in, because then obviously you just eat whatever you want. It just so happens that what you want to eat is the best stuff. And it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle, obviously, as the point's been made very well up here. So it's really just shifting that, and then everything's easy. It all falls into place, but it won't happen overnight. So be patient, and don't be afraid to transition, and take it slow, and it may take a year. If you've eaten a standard American diet for 4 decades, it will take a year to transition to fully start feeling good, and that's okay. Be patient and be good to yourself. And I did find too, I will say just very quick, that as an athlete, it helped tremendously. A few reasons. One, reducing inflammation. So you start drinking juices, getting a lot of chlorophyll, those green foods. You reduce inflammation. When inflammation goes down, inflammation you didn't even know you had, efficiency goes up. It's very, very simple. When efficiency goes up, you move more easily. You don't have to work as hard, and you conserve energy with every muscle contraction. So you can imagine a marathon, half marathon even, triathlon, that's a lot of muscle contractions. So if everyone is easier, think of all the energy you conserve. And obviously if you conserve something, you still have it. So you have more energy because you're more efficient, because your diet reduces inflammation. So that for me I found significant. I found that I was just more efficient. My heart rate came down, my threshold went up, and I became a better athlete. It was basically that simple.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other questions?
I'd actually just
Oh,
like
go
to
ahead.
add to that. Actually, I love that the palate changing has come up so often during this, and to answer, especially for kids, that's actually a great thing to really start developing your palate when you're young. My title at Whole Foods is a health eating specialist, but really I'm a chef. What my job is to do is to convert comfort foods into healthy foods, and really keep that same kind of palate. Why? Because you're used to those comfort foods. There's reasons people eat those. So if you can actually just look at those foods, change them just a little bit differently, you can actually do that. And it actually does take about 10 days for the palate to reset. So if you do something like cut sodium completely out of your diet, after 10 days, your palate completely readjusts and you don't need that salt anymore. That's a great thing to really start looking at, not only for yourself, but for your kids, for the rest of your family, and start really just looking at food in that different kind of a way. I always tell people, don't think outside the box. Like, just forget the box ever existed in the first place. We really need to just completely look at food in a completely new way. That's really, I told Artemis this earlier, that I love that this film is so infectious, because it is. As soon as you see it, you want to show 10 more people it, and they want to show 10 more people. And the more people get this message out there, we're going to change the way America eats, either one plate at a time or one cup at a time.
Yes. Yeah, one plate at a time or one glass of juice at a time.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's all plants.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other questions? Right here.
Yeah.
How did you find Dr. Furman?
How did I find Dr. Furman? Well, that's very interesting. If you go in 2007, about like 2 months before I started shooting, and you put in doctors and in your Google, doctors and fasting, his name came up first. So I called him and I said, mate, listen, I'm from Australia and I'm coming over to make a movie. And he's going, yes, right. And I said, and I'm thinking about doing juicing only. I didn't tell him 60 days. And people ask me why 60. And I mean, originally I was going to do like 40. And the 40 number just came, like I was raised a Catholic and I just, somehow 40, and my initials are JC, and I went 40. And then when we put that together, we said, no, you can't do that. You've got to do 60. You can't do that. So we just came up with this 60 as a random number, right? And so I told Joel, I said, look, I'm thinking about doing this, and would you monitor me during my journey? And, you know, I'll get a blood. What do you want me to do? Basically, I'll do what you tell me. And if the things go pear-shaped, I'll stop. So every 10 days, I went and had a blood test at some lab around the country, and we just programmed every 10 days. And you saw just one of the conversations, because when you make a movie, we shot 500 hours for this film to make it in 96 minutes. So there's a lot of stuff you don't see, and every injection, Joel did it. He gave the results, and it was incredible to see the results, just phenomenally. Each 10 days period, just how the results, and you know what Brendan was talking about, inflammation is, you know, that's a key. There's two things that I talk about a lot, is inflammation and mucus, and you knock both of those things on the head when you either juice or switch to a plant-based diet. And you know what you didn't see in the movie was on day 28 when I was driving down the West Side Highway in New York. Anyone seen that movie Alien, you know, with Sigourney Weaver, where she's got that thing inside her? I felt I was like on the set of Alien. There's this thing coming up my throat, and I'm like hard to breathe. I pulled over and I'm like and what happened was there's this huge chunk of mucus, and I've got pretty big hands, right? Like, look at my hands. It was overflowing and it was in one piece, so I had to pull it out, right? And I'm like looking at it like this huge, like Play-Doh, how good's this? And I became fascinated, and I'm thinking after 28 days, this had been in my gut. Now you think about, where does mucus live? Mucus doesn't live in your elbow or your hip or your knee. It lives between here and here. So every time you eat something, it had to get past that mucus to get out. So then I became obsessed with mucus, and I started asking all these. I mean, you know, it's funny. I mean, if someone, I said this the other day, if someone had said to me 5 years ago, you'd be up in front of 400 or 500 people at a time talking about bowel movements, I would have said you got rocks in your head. But now it's one of my favourite subjects, right? What comes in must come out. And so when I spoke to gastroenterologists and doctors that specialise in this, they say, Joe, most people have got about 1 pint or 2 pints of mucus in their gut when they split them, when they open them up, on their digestive tract, in their lower bowel, when you add it all up. So if you eat food, okay, people say to me, well, Joe, which food causes mucus in the body? Well, the better way of saying it is which food doesn't.
Yes.
And the only food that doesn't is fruits, vegetables, nuts, beans, and seeds. Everything else does. Everything else causes mucus.
Yes.
So every time you eat anything else, you are contributing and adding an eye, obviously, that big stockpile. Now, what I also think, what if I'd stopped on day 25 and it'd still be in there? Thank God I went past 28.
Yeah. One of the sayings about cleansing is, you are what you eat, and you are what you have eaten that you haven't pooped.
Yeah.
So
Well-
if you've eaten a lot of mucus-forming foods, and they're trapped in you, and you haven't pooped those out, you get to release it somehow, some way when you cleanse.
Yeah. And I also like to say, you know, people say to me, why is being overweight unhealthy? I get asked that question a lot. You know, why is being overweight unhealthy? And really, when you think about it, what's actually not, and think about this, what's not unhealthy is being overweight. It's what you did to get there that's the unhealthy part that has caused the problems of what you are prone to. Does that make sense? So when you gain 10 pounds, you are layering to your arteries, you are laying a film which is plaque. And when you lose 10 pounds, that plaque doesn't come off. It doesn't come off when you lose 10. It takes a long time to come off. So it's when you are gaining the weight and putting it on, it's that layering down of that fat onto the arteries, which is the problem, which is where we get this #1 killer in America, which is heart disease. So actually being fat or carrying lots of extra weight if the doctors that I spoke to, and mind you, you get different opinions. We can walk around and carry a bunch of stuff. Now, yes, there's more blood vessels and the blood's got to circulate and all those things. Yes, I know. But actually, what's the real damage is what you did and what you ate to get to that point is where the damage was done. And you can reverse this by switching and following the guys up here and plant-based diet, which is really the only way to go.
Question.
Can I get a general consensus of opinions about gluten?
Okay, so she's asking for just a general consensus about gluten. I have 10 years experience in muscle testing. I have been using muscle testing and testing hundreds and hundreds of people on a wide variety of foods. And 99% of the people I muscle test weak on gluten. Now, I've been gluten-free for 6 years. I feel amazing. And what I notice with people who eat a lot of gluten is they're very puffy because gluten causes inflammation in the body for most people that I've muscle tested and most people that eat gluten. And going gluten-free, if you've been eating bread, pasta, and flour, and sugar, and pastries, is challenging because gluten is also addictive. So, like, getting off gluten is a step-by-step, education, commitment, and then once you go gluten-free, there's a moment of, like, clarity that happens because the inflammation is going down step by step, and when that inflammation decreases, then the clarity returns. And that's what I notice from being gluten-free is I am so clear.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I don't have any issues with gluten. I can tolerate it, but I do feel better if I don't eat it. And in my books, all the recipes are gluten-free, as well as in the whole Vega product line, all gluten-free for the reasons you mentioned. Personally, I find I'm okay with sprouted gluten specifically. So, like some of the Ezekiel bread, or there's a bread called, I think it's Silver Hills as a brand. Because it's sprouted, I find that I do digest it easily, and I feel okay on that. So it's just sort of how I go personally on it. So that's really the only gluten I have is in that sprouted bread.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't have a problem with gluten myself too, but with through the Health Starts Here program, actually Joel Furman is one of our medical advisory board members for that as well. We actually treat gluten kind of like we do meat. We want to do it in smaller portions. So even if, seitan is a very popular vegan substitute for meat, where you can make like roast beef and sandwiches and stuff out of it, but we still keep that to a third ratio. So we always want to pair it with, if you're going to have 4 ounces of seitan, we want you to have 8 ounces of vegetable to go with that. Now that might sound a little excess in some areas, but there's a lot, there's a lot of people that are affected by it. So personally, myself, I actually don't really cook too much with gluten either. And I try to really avoid it because it's such a widespread allergy, and we're seeing so many people, on a day-to-day basis. I mean, that's another part of my job is I give tours, and really for people that are just finding out they're gluten-free, they're really freaked out. They come in and they say, we can't eat anything. And it's like, well, I always take them to the produce department first because I'm like, you can eat everything in this entire room. That's great. And really, what we're finding is a lot of those gluten products are found in those boxed items, and the processed, over-processed. So we're using them to, make things like last long, like puff up and, really turn into a whole different thing. So really kind of sticking to those whole foods, really, and I mean unprocessed foods, is really a way to kind of help avoiding those. Yes. And really choose your moments when you're going to, incorporate gluten into your diet.
Joe?
Yeah, the boys have summed it up very well. In my view, once again, I don't look at it as bad. I sort of think you've got to look at it yourself and don't have a lot of it. When I have it at special occasions. So it's not something, I used to live on pasta every day. The number of times I have pasta in a month would maybe be once a month that I have pasta. So that's how I look at it. There's a great book for those who are interested in a book called The End of Overeating. Has anyone read that by Dr. David Kessler? And what we're talking about up here is a little bit, it made me think about that book in that Kessler, he was the FDA doctor. I think he's a very senior medical doctor here in America, and this is a great book. They've done lots of studies and lots of tests on certain types of people, and there are some people that have absolutely no worries with food whatsoever from a mental point of view, because what we're talking about here is actually physical attachment, like actually how your body reacts. But he contests that at least half the population has emotional connections to food that have gone on in their life. And so I know for myself, with being a sugar addict, because I'll be a sugar addict till the day I die, and I know that for me, when I was at school and I was being bullied and I was like 6 or 7 years of age and didn't have any friends and I had to start a new school every year, that going afterwards to get sugar was one of my best friend. So now, even when it's like I know all the knowledge, I've got all the power, I've got everything I can do, everywhere I go people give me juice, everywhere I go, and still now when I'm stressed or there's some issue going on, I'll find myself hunting down sugar. So that's something that I was asked before that the next movie, I'm really fascinated by this connection of behavioural situation about how we're wired to this attachment to food. And like there are alcoholics and there is NA, I mean, I think that all the new science is coming that so many of us are addicted to food, yet it's very difficult going over to someone's house and they've made you some cake and you've got to say no. You think, I'll have one piece, and you've been off sugar for a week and someone gives you some cake, and then I got to tell you, if I have one piece of cake, I want the whole cake.
Yeah.
I can't just do one piece of cake. I got to tell you, I do the whole cake. So I think that's something that's interesting as well. We've got a question down here.
This is about sugar, I believe. I'm insulin resistance, and I wanted to hear your thoughts about juicing in reference to like diabetes and insulin resistance and balancing that out.
So she's asking what our thoughts are relative to juicing and diabetes and insulin resistance. I can answer that first because I was a spa director at the Tree of Life Rejuvenation Center for 2 years, where I witnessed people doing a juice fast for 7, 14, and 21 days, and 80% of the type 2 diabetics were off their insulin in 3 to 7 days with the juice fast. Now, they were also receiving powerful support from Dr. Gabriel Cousens and the medical staff there, and it was really just, like Joe says, giving their body a rest so that it can heal and self-heal and engaging those self-healing mechanisms. So there's a book that Gabriel wrote called There Is a Cure for Diabetes, because he has years and years of clinical research healing diabetes through juicing and adding multiple therapies simultaneously. And so when I was there, I was like, this is so cool. It's like people coming in 15 years on insulin, off their insulin in 3 to 7 days, and they were just amazed. And it was really about education and just doing what was most beneficial for their body, which was rest, juice, and engaging those self-healing mechanisms.
Everywhere I go, I get people coming up to me saying, I'm no longer taking medication for diabetes because of doing your juice or your EBIT. It's incredible. I've just done a tour around Australia where I did 6 weeks going around my whole country, and I did 72 two-hour appearances in the produce section of the equivalent of our Whole Foods, which is actually it's more like a Walmart, like it's called Woolworths. And everywhere I went, there wasn't an appearance I made where someone didn't come up to me, because the diabetes epidemic is the same in Australia as it is here. And it's affecting 1 in 15, 1 in 16 people. And the forecasts are to go to 1 in 4 if we don't do anything about it, on where we're going right now over the next 30 years. And it just amazes me how many come up to me and say, I just can't believe how this has occurred. Now, if you were just juicing pure grapefruit juice 5 times a day, you're not going to get the same result if somebody is juicing, like what I said before, those 5 colours and lots of veggies as well as the fruit. So we want to just be careful. And I also get asked a lot about juice that you buy in store, like Naked or these other juices. And people, ask me what about that. Now, the problem with that juice is it's been heated. And we alluded earlier to processed foods. And the problem with processed foods, and I'm just an amateur, these guys are the experts, but I'm just the amateur, but I like to break it down into layman's terms. The problem with processed foods is that it's been cooked. And when you cook it, you kill a lot of the good stuff. So a lot of these juices, when I make my juice, and anyone who makes your juice at home out of your machine, that juice will last 3 days if you keep it in the fridge and you have it sealed, say in a mason jar or something. You'll get 3 days out of that, as long as it's kept cold. So what's actually going on is the bacteria wants that juice. Like the bacteria, just think about this for a minute. You've got humans, animals, insects, bacteria, and phytonutrients. All of these bigger categories, they all want that. That's what they want, because this is the energy from the sun. So bacteria wants to eat nutrients. Insects want to eat nutrients. Animals want to eat nutrients. Humans, we need to eat nutrients. So when you actually take a fresh juice and you leave it on the bench with a lid off in the heat, bacteria loves that. It can multiply. It can go to town on that juice and rot it. So we're supposed to eat food that rots. So the idea now is there's a race on between you and bacteria to get to the produce. And so I like to think of it that when we're juicing, that we want to drink it as quickly as we can, or put it in the fridge, seal it, temperature down where bacteria can't fly, and it's sealed because the air is where most of the bacteria is that's going to channel into the juice. Now there's a thing called HPP. Have you guys heard about HPP? So this is modern, brand new technology that is so exciting that it's coming, and it's coming to America. In fact, it's here now downstairs. HPP stands for high pressure pasteurization or high pressure processing. So instead of heating the juice, what we do is we put it in a hyperbaric chamber, and we surround the bottle of juice. Has to be plastic, can't be glass, unfortunately. And we surround it with water. So think about a bottle floating in a chamber, just filled with water. And we apply 96,000 pounds per square inch of pressure to the bottle of juice. That's like going to the deepest part of the ocean times 6. Okay, it's like having 3 SUVs on your big toe. And what happens is that bottle of juice compresses by about 15% under that immense pressure. And the water temperature goes from about 38 degrees Fahrenheit to about 60 degrees Fahrenheit in 2 minutes. Then it's done. Takes 3 minutes to drain the chamber. The bottle of juice comes out. We do 2,000 at a time, and they are what's called HPP juice. High pressure processing. That juice will last 2 months as long as it's kept in a fridge. If you open the lid and let air in, you have just like you have as a normal juice 3 days. If you open it and leave it on the bench in the heat, you've got about like 3 hours. This is not juice that you can like think about putting in the pantry. As soon as it's not in the fridge, it'll go off in like an hour, in probably about 6 or 7 hours. Even though the lid's sealed, the bottle will explode because you're allowing the bacteria that's dormant to multiply. So my point on this is that with the change that's coming, with all these people here tonight in Austin, everything that's going on with great companies like Whole Foods, with leaders like Brent, these people that are all here today that are passing this message on, commerce is catching up. So Howard Schultz bought the only HPP juice company in America called Evolution Juice. He bought it. He bought it because he saw this bloody movie. And he bought, you're going to see in 12 months' time, now, I mean, I've got nothing to do with it as yet, but what they're going to do is they're going to take all the Naked, all the Adwalla, everything's going to be gone from Starbucks. The only juice in Starbucks is going to be HPP. Because his view is all you're doing when you drink that is just sugar and flavourings. That's what you're having. So now there's a company in Dallas that does HPP guacamole. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. I can't remember the name of it right now. So there's now seafood. So things are coming down the pipeline where people are now starting to wake up and paying a premium for this sort of product. So that's exciting. I just thought I'd share that with you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Joe. Yeah, I learned something tonight. That's really neat.
Just Google it, HPP.
Yeah. Question over here.
It's hard to hear you. I think you said you've never had a green vegetable in your life. You can't remember the last one you ate. Okay, and how old are you? You're 14 years of age? Okay, see, well, you've got this blessing of youth on your side, okay? And your body, like I want you to think about inside your body, you've got like an army, a navy, an air force, you've got Marines, and you've got a SEAL Team 6 even in there. And they're working and they're fighting a war every second of every minute of every hour of every day of your life. They're fighting a war against the bad guys. Now, if you don't give them the ammunition and the energy to fight that war, you'll be good for the next 10 years, no problem. 20 years, you'll be all right. But trust me, once you hit your 40s and 50s, and there's a lot of people here you could go and talk to about this, trust me, they know. That war, you start to lose that war. You start to get beat. So if your question is, where's a good place to start? What I would do is I would juice some green juice and see if you like green juice. Like take, Swiss chard, take some cucumber, some celery, take all the greens, go down into the store downstairs and get a lot of greens. Now make a green juice. Then do half apple juice. Okay, so half green, half apple juice. Start off because you're going to have a sweet. Then if you can't do that, do a quarter green juice, 3/4 apple juice. And slowly over time, take the apple juice down, because your palate, as we've talked about, will shift over time. And then within about a month, you'll be quite easily be able to drink the whole juice with maybe only a dash of apple juice. And then what you'll find by doing that is just by having that 1 cup a day, you're giving, you know, enough energy down there for your age, where other things in your life, like I talked about with Kurt, will start to change, and you'll start to go, you know what, I might have some celery, or I might have this. So that's what I would, that's my advice.
I'd
Great
like
advice.
to add.
It's time to complete our panel tonight. I'd like to thank everyone who came tonight. Thank you for staying, and thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you to Dan Merrick. Give him a hand. Yes. And if you have any questions about Health Starts Here or healthy eating, come to Whole Foods. Dan is downstairs serving his community and shining brightly. Thank you to Brendan for coming tonight.
You're welcome.
From
Thank
Vega.
you.
And your book is Thrive.
One book is called Thrive, one is called Thrive Foods.
Yes, so Thrive and Thrive Foods. Check out Brendan's book. I'm from Cleanse ATX, and we are going to be creating a 10-day raw food and juicing program for our community here. And all the events have been recorded, all the ebooks, all the community support is going to be cataloged and reproduced to continue to share with our local community here in Austin at cleanseatx.com. And finally, thank you very, very much, Joe, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been great. I've loved being here. I love Austin. I'm coming back here for sure.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks very much, and thanks everyone for sharing the word and passing it on. It's been great to see. You know, we want to try and spread the word, and you guys are all doing it. So thank you very, very much.